Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Riley, and this is.
I'm Sean Carter.
We are the managing editors of FLYWAY, Journal of Writing and Environment. So, this is a journal that features creative writing and art from people all over the world. It is put together by the graduate students in Iowa State University's MFA Program for Creative Writing and Environment. John, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we publish on the site?
Yeah, so on our website, we publish primarily environmental writing. We publish fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, as well as visual art. Additionally, we also publish book reviews and some interviews with other writers.
You can find those all the way at the bottom if you scroll down.
Most of our work is focused on the environment and place, but we take those definitions to be fairly broad. If you explore our website, you'll find pieces that explore typical environmental themes, but then also pieces that make sense of environment in a little bit of a more abstract kind of way.
Yeah, and some of the pieces might not be what you would think of as being environmentally centered. Not all of them are about rural settings or animals. Some of it's about what it's like to live in an urban environment or a certain kind of cultural environment. So we get a lot of variety, a lot of interesting things due to that broadness. Oh yeah, so on our About page, you can see some of the people working on the journal right now. We've got a good chunk of the MFA program working as editors. They work with authors to kind of get each piece ready to publish, and then we even have an art director who helps us get a nice, high quality look for the journal. So if you ever want to learn more about us, definitely check out this page. You can learn about our submission guidelines, and we'll be able to review your work. We'll be very happy to do it. Other than that, please come check us out at flywayjournal.org.
And we're excited that you'll be able to get to hear some of our Flyway pieces that will be read today in the Flyway Editors feature. So the lineup is going to be Miss American Sky, I Learn About You on the Prairie, I Still Won't Get My Hair Wet, Creek Bank Imaginary, God of Coconut Octopuses, Homesick, and Refrain. So please enjoy.
Yeah, just hearing those titles makes me excited. It was a really good issue. Have fun.
Miss American Sky by Chad Hansen. This year, a 27-year-old waitress from the Bronx shows up to compete for the title of Miss American Sky. The officials tell her it will not be easy, but she stays. She goes up against the southern sky. She vies with the aurora borealis and a storm in the desert. When the waitress presents herself, the judges have to squint because she's tiny. Still, they take the time. Skies are astute. They spend eternity looking down at us. But when the judges study her, they can tell. 2 rivers of tears have poured from her eyes. They agree. Hardship has made her kind. So they ask one of their assistants to put a tiara on her head, then give her a hug of rain.
I Learn About You on the Prairie by Leah Claire Kaminsky. Things about to live are close and hard like flame beaten to armor. Shields sheathing, pussy willows white, clenched dense. Another limb stark, red as manzanita, a dun brown one that bows out as it grows. Scaled with buds, then draws hands together to pray, drive them upward. I can imagine birds there, in that thicket. At first, I can't see you there at all. You in my future arms, soft and plump, fragile. But now, this is your early spring. This is your still winter. You are flex cells forcing out. You are crusted with fur and wax. You engage my body, breathe water, my blood. bud closed and feeding. I can't see you, and you are blind and taxing.
I Still Won't Get My Hair Wet by Ashia Ajani. Growing up in Colorado, I never was a water-connected person. Besides, my bloodline lacks proclivity towards moisture, though these lungs know nothing but flood. The cold water will swallow you whole, and where will you be without this landlocked abandon? Grandma chides when I venture a new baptism. She naps on my swim cap tight enough to knock these perm-bruised edges loose. The chlorine clean makes it pure enough for plunge, recalls Mississippi murky water for what it really hides, as we buy back our health, a purloined possession. This kind of thirst summons an ancient lust. We've been parched for centuries. In secret, I seek to swim, cloaked by what carried and buried my bloodline. I'm still hot with no eagerness to splash and cool off, unduly capable of float. Years ago in the wild edges of Missouri, my paternal grandfather throws my adolescent father into Smithville Lake. Shout, swim! If they come for you, you gotta know how to float. If they come for you, you better hold your goddamn breath.
Creekbank Imaginary, The Cuckoo Round 413 by Derek Furr. The cuckoo, she's a pretty bird. She warbles as she flies. She never says cuckoo till the 4th day of July. The clock that hung on a nail on the front porch was a pine cottage with gingerbread along the eaves and hands painted green like lolly-lobby needles. 2 red doors snapped open to let the bird out. They were reliable, but the bird sometimes caught on a hinge. If no one was around to assist, she cuckooed inside her cave, accompanied by the angry clicks and clatters of her gears. Then the doors snapped shut. Under the clock is the banjo player. When he sings, the banjo keeps an unsteady rhythm. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and as if his hands made one melody, his voice another, all in a minor key, driving forward and unsettled. That's how it goes, he laughs. His wife rocks on a stool and keeps unsteady time. She smiles, her few teeth burnished with snuff. Cataracts veil her eyes. She sees in cloud formations. A heavy mist has rolled up from the creek and blanketed the porch, eliminating her disadvantage. There is a third person. He sits on an overturned bucket. Bareback and bare-legged, he is the only one who is dressed for the heat. He has made a table from 2 other buckets and a plank. He is cleaning suckers, pitching their heads and entrails to a horde of cats. He favors a quiet orange one that sits in the corner behind the woman. On a tine of his trident gig, he reaches it a filleted chunk. When the others slink over, he smacks them with the pole. No one wants to heat the cabin further in the summer swelter, so in the yard a grill is warming, its coals glowing through the fog. A swill of lard in a cast-iron pan has just begun to simmer. Nearby in the woods, cuckoos have started calling. The calls sound nothing like the clock's cuckoo. Do you remember Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? The episodes on an ice sheet crowded with elephant seals? Their trumpeting and the bird's call are in the same section of the orchestra, the reedy tones of an English horn and bassoon. As for the cuckoo's song, it is neither a warble nor the cheery piping of the clock bird. Think of laser guns in an arcade game of the 1980s. The yellow-billed cuckoo, the species in the pine forest around the cabin, is a space invader. In sound, that is. Because this space belongs to no one. All boundaries and claims and deeds being temporary impositions, the conversion of space to place. The woods are like a ballad, a palimpsest. Long before the cabin, when an earlier variant of the cuckoo bird was sung in a major key in the English countryside about a bird of another species, this clearing by the creek was Chickasaw, and the yellow-billed cuckoo's call and song, what might they have been compared to? How might they have been imitated? And what might a fine imitation sound like? The cuckoo, she's a pretty bird. She warbles as she flies. She brings us good tidings. She tells us no lies. The banjo player's wife, Esther, rises and walks slowly, guided by sound, routine, slight variations in temperature, all of these as well as broad patches of dark and light. When she comes to the grill, she hovers her hand over the pan as if to conjure, but actually to determine whether the heat is evenly distributed. The lard crackles and hisses at her. Its angry spatter stings her palm, but she does not flinch. She walks over to the fisherman and takes the fillets. She drops the fish in a brown bag of salt, pepper, and cornmeal, and shakes it like a tambourine to the random rhythms of the banjo. The fillets jitter when she drops them in the lard. This is the claw hammer style, the banjo player explains. That's what they call it. I reckon on account of your hands, like a claw hammer, sort of pluck, stroke, pluck, pluck, stroke, and such. I never could like the Earl Scruggs way, that foggy mountain, and my fingers are too crooked up with the arthritis for all the diddly fast diddling on the strings. No, sir, it's always been the claw hammer has served me just fine, and it's been good enough to get people up dancing. Now that puts me in mind of how Miss Esther, my sweet wife, could one time cut a rug. Music could get up in her, sometimes at church, sometimes when I was playing the square dance, and she started to shake, trembling like the palsy, and look out. She would bust up the floor like nobody's business. That's what happens when the music gets up in you. The general consensus was that Miss Esther was a witch. The primary evidence was that her veiled eyes looked in different directions. One always gazed to the left, which was the devil's side, and the other wandered around aimlessly, it would seem, even when she was hard at a task. Some said there was nothing aimless about it. No, that eye watched the spirits, which were plentiful, and not all benevolent. Miss Esther seldom spoke. Those who had heard her reported whispers, barely audible, and a language with words that no one knew. The banjo player had brought her home with him years ago from his ramblings. She came from somewhere back in the mountains, people said, from a village that was situated exactly where 4 states connected like a crossroads. The banjo player had been smitten, as who wouldn't be in the atmosphere of spells and unchecked desire of a crossroads village in every place and no place all at once. It had been rumored that the banjo player had dealings with the underworld, because he would play any venue no matter how sin-ridden. But most people wouldn't hold that against him. He was friendly, they loved music, and he would play a wedding or a birthday for a plug of tobacco or a ham bone. His staunch admirers insisted that Miss Esther wasn't all that bad, even if she was a witch. Miss Esther's dancing has been mentioned. That did not help her case among the primitive Baptists. But those people were also skeptics about speaking in tongues and the Holy Spirit's movements during Pentecostal revivals. One might quibble over the difference between Holy Ghost and demonic possession, but if the same banjo playing engendered both, and each involved ecstatic gyration and unknown languages, only the Lord himself could tell. So let him distinguish. There is plenty to see and feel in this world for anyone who isn't closed up like the coffin that will one day house him. Miss Esther had been seen walking across the surface of the river at nights. If she were a witch, why not fly? She liked the feel of water under her feet. Besides, her movement was less a walk than a glide, like a water strider. The third one, the fisherman, how did he come here? He drifted up one evening on a raft made of tire tubes. He was an enormous man, larger than anyone in the region. He wore his thick black hair in a braid and had a hoop in his nose. There was room, so the banjo player and Miss Esther welcomed him. He gave me a place to lay my head, so I keep us in food. Gig suckers, trap rabbits, sometimes shoot a wild hog. Ain't nothing more to it than that. Ain't no drama here, except in the music. Maybe you shouldn't make out otherwise when you write about us. Just independence and contentment. Some say the fisherman is Miss Esther's son, a werewolf, back from before the banjo player brought her to the creek bank. Others say he is her lover, and they step out on Saturday nights when the banjo player is off earning onions with his music. There are even a few who claim it's both, werewolf son and lover, doing an Oedipal two-step by the light of the moon. The banjo player laughs. Like he says, only drama around here is in my music. Ain't nothing more to it than that. People look for drama when sometimes it's nothing but happiness. Like what we got here. Independence and contentment. That's all you need to write.
Of Coconut Octopuses by Keats Conley. I'm setting the record straight. The plural is octopuses, and coconuts are not a nut but a fibrous drupe. A drupe is a stone fruit in the genus Prunus, like an olive or an apricot, except when a stone fruit is, in fact, an octopus. A tool is an instrument held in the hand, or in this case, a muscular hydrostat. Stilt walk the seafloor in the stolen husk of a knot-nut. Hold on to your own portable fortress. We measure intelligence by the manipulation of objects, to open a jar and dissolve in it. Illusion is an atrophied muscle. Unfurl, let your brain escape into the nebulous space of the body.
Homesick by Dana Salvador. In a city, hundreds of miles away from the corn crib of my childhood, Mozart plays on the hotel piano. And instantly, I feel the reverberations of chords along cool stucco where, as a child, my bunk bed pressed against the living room wall. My sister's practicing the same section over and over again, just to make it right. And I am here, so far away, trying to remember the crawl space between my father's seat on the tractor and the window behind him. An area just big enough to haul my blanket and fall asleep to the image of a plow overturning the earth between rows of corn, my head vibrating to the rhythm of the machine beneath me. I am here, standing among marbled floors and suited strangers, trying to remember how my family stood on the porch in spring to watch flashes of lightning brighten the darkened sky, how the smell of petrichor filled our lungs, and after the storm, how the taste of cinnamon rolls, fresh from my grandmother's oven, lingered.
Refrain by Ashia Ajani. Detroit, lauded as a truly American art form, birthed from the underbelly of resistance and Black joy, broke its back somewhere along the way or was tripped, stood up, bamboozled, deleted its history, crawled back out of the den, and faced a new audience. The spectacle, no longer spectator, no longer musician, no longer owner or steward. Mama goes back to Detroit and starts reminiscing, conjuring old ghosts. The dead here do not engage in games of trick and shadow. They demand to be heard. Hammering their heads against the concrete speaks and crumble, all the potholes, dark chasms filled by an everlasting want to claim a home. Uncle Gaylord built this city. Cousin Lazarick worked these factories. All the ancestors' bones are scattered across the landscape, from Dearborn Heights to Anchor Bay. Our blood greases every wheel turning the damn car. We are the damn car, bitten by the smoke, rust, and risk of removal. Look right here. This street. That's where Aunt Selma and Aunt Lump used to live. That lot used to be a park. There might still be chestnut trees.